Well, hello everybody. My name is Shayann Ramedani. I'm an alumni from the class of 2017. I currently am at Penn State College of Medicine over in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So just a stone's throw away. I'm still pretty close to my Pennsylvania alma mater. I really truly miss it. There's nowhere else like Ursinus. I can tell you all that much. Um, after I ended my work after I ended my undergrad at Ursinus, I ended up going to the consulting route, actually. I graduated with a degree in biology and Spanish, and then I went over to Johns Hopkins. And there I was part of the Armstrong Institute for Patient Safety and Quality. And I was a management consultant throughout the Hopkins system, but I was mostly designated within Washington, D.C. at Sibley Memorial Hospital. Over there, I actually got my first sort of experience within innovation and understanding how systems work and how to optimize systems to their highest peak performance and how to work with people in transitioning different roles in different environments. As an undergraduate, when you move towards the real world, it's a very interesting transition in that you start to see that things don't ideally move as they should. Things aren't always case studies. Things aren't always isolated research experiments. And what ends up happening is you start to understand both where things can go absolutely wrong and where things have so much room to grow. And I really enjoyed that Ursinus gave me the opportunity through my majors, through my research, through CSCG, and through the different organizations I was a part of to work through problem solving. I really am so proud of all the students today that came together at the UImagine Center, and you guys went through this, 2-day event to exercise this wonderful, wonderful opportunity to innovate, to solve problems, especially in a tumultuous time like we have today. Now, COVID is a very scary period. These past 9 months, we can all say, were pretty unexpected for a large part and life-changing in many other respects. Things that we normally took for granted in our systems works, in our administrations, in general life just completely got turned upside down. And I can say of all the things that got turned upside down, healthcare was definitely the place that got hit especially hard for many different reasons. And medical education became something where we all just got changed. We had to switch our roles in many respects. And then on top of that, we had to reshape how we thought about healthcare. And that was, I think, the toughest part. When you start to look at the places where improvement can be done the most, the more you continue in a certain path or in a certain major or in a certain field of work, you start to get warped in that perception. When something catastrophic occurs, you get this broad new understanding of, wait, all these things that I thought were conventional wisdom and things that I thought were the complete and utter end-all be-all are actually able to change. I feel like the first example of that is the way we consume information in healthcare. Healthcare information is a bit hard to interpret because it goes along many facets. The first is, of course, scientific information, quality reviews, and looking at how a hospital functions, how healthcare functions, and how science functions to help people. Now, when we look at all the information that's out there and we look at all the studies that are published, there are a lot of people that can consume information in different ways. But when something catastrophic happens, there's almost too much information and there's a lot of misinformation. And one of the things that we did at Penn State and that the students got together and did to innovate the way we consume information is to create roles for curators and consultants. So for my end of the Curators and Consultants program, I paired up with another medical student who was actually a management consultant too, and we broke down the healthcare and economics and supply chain. And what ended up happening is our information every single day would get taken and be given to the executive organization for Penn State Health, and then on top of that, the risk management group. for the actual COVID-19 task force. And based on what we would be seeing within the literature, within what will be coming out, this can be from Moody's reports for investments, this can be from Becker's, this can be from a lot of different organizations that release healthcare information. We would distill that information into lines. I'm talking about like 10-page articles. We would distill it into 3 to 4 lines. And we would have to give it. We have to condense everything together. And instead of going and underlining and creating a 1-page summary, we had to create a way for information to be as high yield as possible, as dense as possible within the 3 to 4 sentences, and to serve its function. And the major takeaways from that we got in our careers when it comes to, after COVID ends, after this era ends, is to be able to distill large quantities of information, but also be able to explain it in a manner that can be in a few seconds. As you all have learned today, I bet, when you're pitching something, if you are taking too long in the pitch, if you're creating almost more work for yourself trying to explain your product or idea, it actually ends up harming you in the long term. The more you know about your situation, the more you know about the product or the system that you're trying to market, the quicker almost you can explain it and the easier you're able to explain it. So always gain a mastery of that realm. Always understand, if you have this segment of the market, if you have this segment of ideas, if you have this segment of understanding where you're working, master that, and then be able to explain it and distill it very quickly at many different levels, because that's what you're going to have to do when you innovate. That's what you have to do when you have to pitch. And that's something that I can guarantee you in no other period of time you're going to learn in medical school. So we definitely we all got this really, really amazing opportunity. The next one actually was more personal for me as opposed to the health system itself. I'm part of a consortium of students that develop free clinics around central Pennsylvania, and we're called SCOPE. It's me and 3 other MD PhD students, and we get together and we start to look at this sort of array of central Pennsylvania and see where we can do the most good. And we've developed many clinics as to this point. We're counting about 9 to 10 at this point. And what we've been able to do with our developments is provide central PA a network of PA, OT, RN support, pharmacy support, all of these different healthcare needs in a very consistent manner, in a way that we have community support, we have stakeholders who want to have clinics there, and we have a constant communication with people. If someone has a problem, we can help solve it. But the thing is, we don't impose a problem usually. They give it to us, and then we try to solve it the best way we can and the best way that works for them. We were able to do this for about 2 to 3 years, and COVID hit. And we had a big event planned. And this was in Lykins, Pennsylvania. I don't know if any of you know where Lykins, Pennsylvania is, but it is 1 hour north of Harrisburg. So it is the center, like the actual center of Pennsylvania. And it's in the mountains. You cross this really, really beautiful part of the Appalachian Trail. And it is just all valley afterwards. And it's to the point where actually sometimes when we send over a helicopter, helicopters can't cross over if it's a very icy pass, if there's snow coming down, because you get up to an altitude that it becomes a little bit risky. These people usually don't go up the mountain to see healthcare providers. They don't usually go up the mountain to go and access places. The closest hospital that was to them got closed in March 1st. As a result, we as well as the Dauphin County government, we thought it would be a great opportunity to have a health outreach. The problem became that COVID-19 completely stopped all of this. And we had to see, how do we best keep everybody safe, keep a very fluid system of bringing people in, and then on top of that, actually executing the services that we were there to perform. And what we had to do was think of a free clinic model. And what we had already done with Scope is take a free clinic model and completely break it down and make it into a network. So we had to redo that, but with a specific site. How do we take healthcare, or like direct patient to patient, patient to provider interaction, how do we break that down and make it safe for a free clinic for 300 people? And what we decided to do is we did a drive-through approach where we had a select amount of services. We worked with pharmaceutical staff. And what ended up happening is we had a very fluid clinic flow. We treated almost 300 people that day. These were people that they needed pharmaceutical med reconciliation. They needed access to food, healthy food options, which we were able to provide with generous donations. We were able to be a part of an enormous fair that Lycans has and is open to that area of Dauphin County and the surrounding counties of New Cumberland and in that general area. And what we were able to do there is by breaking things apart, by re-innovating how we thought that we had already innovated, we could get to a point where we can actually provide the services we need to, help the people we need to, and then learn something for ourselves. Because every time you go through these hardships, every time you have to be forced to break down whatever you know and create something absolutely new from it, you develop a new perspective. And you develop something that you can take on for the rest of your projects. I can guarantee you, with any problem, if you are actually open to constraining yourself even more than you are with a general project, you start to become more creative and you start to develop new avenues. And that's just going to be the general gist of things in life as things get harder and harder. When projects become bigger and more people are stakeholders and there's more either money, resources, or management issues that come up, there has to be room to innovate and to re-strategize. The last example I have is one of the biggest things that have been on the news: PPE, masks, gowns. I remember the first time I came across this was when I was in my neurosurgery rotation. Being in your third year, you go through a lot of clinical rotations. And my first was neurology and psychiatry. I was ending out my neurology rotations with neurosurgery. And I remember the first neurosurgical procedure I was going into, and I was excited. I was amped to scrub in, let's go, let's have a good time. And they stopped me and they said, yeah, no, you're not scrubbing it. There's no way you're scrubbing it. And I was like, wait, what? Me? I'm the medical student. I'm supposed to be scrubbing it. I'm supposed to learn. And they're like, yeah, we don't have enough PPE. And I was like, wait, what? There was this huge shock to me because I never thought of that. I had never thought in that moment, there's a limit on PPE. There's a limit on gloves. There's a limit on masks. How is that even possible? And then the next week we realized we don't even have enough to go for one more week. We realized our supply chain is flawed, and the whole country realized this at once. And as you all saw in the news, as everybody experienced within CVS, Rite Aid, and every drugstore chain, everything started to become really limited. So what do we have to do? Well, just like the clinic, just like everything else, you go back to your chain, you go back to your systems approach, and you break down what went wrong. Where are we going wrong here? And what we realize is the manufacturers of N95 masks, the manufacturers of gloves, the manufacturers of masks, there is one stop hold in these places. And we had to actually figure out where that was. And what we ended up finding out was a lot of it came from the actual weaving of the masks. A lot of it came from the actual machines available in the world to weave these masks. And that was one of the anchor points that we found that was the rate limiting factor, or what didn't allow for that influx to come through, no matter how many orders people put in. And what did we do? I was part of a part of the medical, the Hershey Medical Center called the Center for Medical Innovation, and I was doing some work with them, but they switched their entire initiative over to something called MASK, which was through all the Penn State network, where the medical school and the engineering school both got together and saw, okay, let's tackle this from the medical side and from the engineering side. And what happened was we ended up creating masks, we ended up creating gowns, we ended up creating one-time use stethoscopes, a lot of PPE and a lot of resources that we ended up donating to other places too. there was such an influx from innovating and from getting ideas together that the engineering school couldn't do by themselves and the medical school couldn't do by themselves, or the medical institute couldn't do by themselves. We got together, we worked with each other, we collaborated, and it was fantastic. We got communicating. We had Zoom calls where we got everyone up to speed. We had giant email chains that were actually very interesting because I'm not an engineer. I took 2 classes for physics, physics 1, physics 2. That's about as much engineering physics as I know. And I remember one of my tasks at one point was to read an engineering textbook on materials engineering for synthetic plastics. Wow, that was over my head. And I didn't even think I could do something like that because I didn't understand what materials engineering was in that respect. But when you're called to do something like that, you sit down and you sit next to Google and you look up every single word you don't know and you start to get an understanding of what you're working with. Because when you're writing down that research report or that white paper of, okay, so what's going on here and what are the points that we need to hit on? You say, well, if we need to innovate something, it's in these 3 respects. Here are my sources. And this is the best understanding that I have. And then we take that to the engineers and they say, yeah, this is actually right, or this is wrong. No, we have to rework this. But that entire process is completely foreign to most medical students. It was foreign to me. It's foreign to most providers. But when you want to innovate a system, you have to cross over from what you know. You know, if an economist can't just be an economist, you have to cross over to another barrier. A business person has to also be a subject matter expert. When you start to merge things together and when you start to be multifaceted, and not only business and not only engineering and not only the sciences, but in every respect of a system, then that's where you can actually see that your innovative skills, number one, become more seasoned. But then you in general just become more broad-minded of a person. And you're open to more change. And you're open to seeing things from different lights, which is so amazing because you get to work with remarkable people who are equally as open-minded and even more brilliant. I'm honored every single day I get to go and work with people that I am absolutely enamored by and absolutely taken aback by how talented they are. And it makes me want to work harder. It makes me so proud to be part of the institution I am and from where I came from, because a lot of these same things came from my education at Her Highness, the opportunities I was given at Her Highness, the places I worked at afterwards, and where I am right now. And there's always more room to grow. The last point I can give and the last takeaway from all of this is that all of you students who are here today, you all are more than just students. You are students right now, and you, of course, have to complete your assignments, you have to take your exams, you have to rise up that academic ladder and check the boxes, but you have so much to give. You are not just somebody who goes through the process kind of haphazardly or sort of with a one-track mind. You are more than that. And I think COVID and I think opportunities for innovation show you that, because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm in Bio 101. I got to study for this exam. I got to study for this exam. Wait, what Finch am I supposed to remember again? What's the genetic chart? Yeah, trust me, I remember the bumblebee exam, the exam where we had to like look at bumblebee patterns and stuff like that. I remember all of that. But I also remember the parts where I was told, okay, so this biomolecular marker, we have no idea how this is going to work with our Western blot. Let's find a way. And I remember those were the times where I would sit down with my PI and we would find a way, and I would be absolutely enamored with the way they went about finding solutions to problems and how I helped. And that is something that I've taken with myself, and I have aimed to just improve every single day. And I know you all, by your dedication today and by coming and you all just being a part of this event, show that you're interested in this too, and that you are future innovators within our society. And I can only see bright things. Thank you so much.
Shayann, thank you, Shayann. Can I open it up to questions? I think we have a few minutes for questions. It was such a great presentation. I'll turn the floor over to students and see if they have any questions.
I just have a comment.
Great.
So like I'm a freshman, so I very much relate to the problems of just like checking the boxes and like I have to study for this exam, I have to study for the next one. So like it was really nice to be reminded that we're just not robots, that we're like capable and we can make like contributions to society because we're definitely not just robots sitting in chairs staring at a computer all day. So it was very nice to be reminded of that.
I'm glad. And I felt that so many times. Whatever track you're on, whatever you want to do with your life, there are always points to where you're thinking, I need to check boxes. And to a certain extent, you have to. There are a lot of places where you have to. Sometimes you grit your teeth, you get through it. Exams are tough. Studying is tough. I completely understand that. But to exercise that portion of your mind that says, let me think about how this can be even better. Let me think about where I can change things and make either my life better, other people's lives better, or just change the way I think about something. That's the human experience. That's the truly invigorating portion. I'm glad I could help even if slightly.
Thanks.
Of course.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So, a lot of what you were talking about, like you obviously have dealt with solving like pretty big and like big scale problems. How were you able to bridge that mental gap between like saying like, oh, like I'm just like a med student, and then you having to branch off and focus on like different types of subjects? How did you bridge that mental gap to get yourself to do that?
That's a very good question. And I can tell you that when I was a student, I wasn't this confident. I was checking off a lot of boxes. I was on the pre-med path, and I don't know how many of you are pre-med here or pre-health sciences, but it's a very rigorous path and it's very arduous. And sometimes passing the buck and saying, I'm just a student, almost makes the process harder. Because if you don't see yourself in a position where you can actually promote change, where you can actually think of yourself as more than a student, it becomes tougher. And you don't find this in the first year. In the first year, things are so novel that you don't have time to even process anything. But I can tell you, when I was a junior, and I was starting to really get into the hard classes, and I was starting my prep for my MCAT, and I was really, everything was hitting pretty hard. I had to sit down and say, I have to have the confidence to admit what I don't know and bridge that. And I feel like that's the place where you can actually finally sit and say, this is what I do know. This is what I don't know. And let me see if I can do that. One of the hardest things when I started in my career after Ursinus is that I didn't have any business knowledge. I had some minor economics knowledge from research I did at Ursinus, and some work that I would do just of my own volition. But actual formal training in numbers was a very difficult thing for me, and that's when I was able to take some classes and actually understand, oh, okay, well, these are the forms of finance that, matter in this field. This is how accounting applies to this. This is where white papers are, or like papers that are regulatory papers apply to this. Things that I hadn't learned in academia. And I feel like being able to do that, being able to contrast what I do know and what I don't know, and being very confident admitting I don't know, and then bridging that gap, that's the number one thing. And that just comes with learning every day. That just comes with admitting you don't know something and then being excited to learn about it. And I've always loved to admit that I don't know things, because then I'm like, okay, well, I can do a class on it. I can go read 10 papers on it. I can do something, because that's the amazing part of life, where you get to learn about a million different things.
Other questions?
I have another one actually. So what, I guess, really motivates you to keep doing what you're doing?
There's two sides of it. Number one is, might be a little bit cliched, but honestly, it's helping people. I love free clinic work. I love medicine in the respect that I get to help a lot of people with what I do, and I get to help providers do what they do right now in my role as a medical student, but that I also have a future in which I can help people in a way that a lot of people really really value. And I think that's like the number one thing. We all want to be valued in society in one way or another. And this is how I see myself being valuable in society. And just having that ability to help people, both from a personal standpoint, if you're sitting in a patient room and you get to talk to somebody, but also from a system standpoint, also from saying, well, if the system is unjust, or if there's a gap somewhere, or if there's a way we can fix something to help a large amount of people, then let's do that. Let's have the knowledge base to do that too. The second just comes from fulfillment of self. You want to do something where every day in the morning, or at least 90% of the mornings, we're not all perfect, but in 90% of the mornings, you can wake up and say, wow, I am excited to do what I want to do. Even if it's a tough one, you say, well, you know what? I'm still doing what I love. Even if this week is rough, I'll get through it because I love what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be immediate. You don't have to get up every single day and say, I love what I'm doing. But you have to get to the point where you say, I know I'm on the path to being somewhere where I really, really am going to be happy, and then enjoying the process of getting there. And that's all incremental. That doesn't happen overnight. You don't find what makes you instantly happy overnight. It's all a progressive process. So you kind of just got to fall in love with that process. It's a lot of trial and error.
Thank you, because I'm a freshman, so I'm like, I guess, kind of understanding that actually makes me feel a little bit more motivated too, especially because like the pandemic, and it's really hard to like stay focused even like on a laptop sometimes. So
of course.
Other students? Give them a minute, Jim. We have a little bit of a delay sometimes with asking questions.
Oh, I gotcha.
I have a question. How did you become interested in innovation?
Innovation is something that I saw as incredibly crucial when I started to look at healthcare systems. I really got interested in healthcare systems through a study abroad opportunity I got through the CSCG, and I did it for my Spanish major as well. And I looked at the Spanish healthcare system, and then I started to realize the gaps in the U.S. healthcare system, and that was kind of like my aha moment, where I realized what a healthcare marketplace is and how there's so many facets to everything. And that's kind of like like in the Matrix, when you take the red pill or the blue pill and all of a sudden, oh wow, everything becomes opened up to you. That was kind of my moment where I was like, wow, this is so complex. This requires a lot of reworking. Like, if you want to sit here and say, I just am going to be passively walking through things, that's tough. That's really, really tough. You have to be able to innovate. You have to be able to help contribute to the system that you're a part of. My first experience with that was through learning the process of Lean Six Sigma for consulting, and learning efficiency metrics. That was like my beginner guide to understanding. And then like throughout the past 3-4 years, I've gotten a little bit more of a sense of how you can innovate in any system. But actually what I like about it the most is that I'm consistently shown that I know absolutely nothing. And I find that fascinating. I find that amazing. I love the fact that this is only the beginning of my knowledge, and it has all the places to grow, and there's all the places to learn. I feel like it would be bad if at 25 you knew everything. I feel like that would be really like, oh wow, is that what life is all about? But no, that's where it started, and I can only see it, making me more and more fulfilled.
Yeah, it seems like an unusual combination, like the medical doctor that's like creative, innovative side. It's a weird combination.
You don't see it entirely as often as it needs to be. I really think everyone in healthcare, I think everybody in the world has a role to be innovative. If that was an ideal world for me, I would say everybody needs to be innovative. But truly people who love the place that they are and love the ecosystem that they work in and the people that they work with, they have a true role to be innovative, because you only can serve to make things better. And if you don't, scrap it up, throw it in the recycling bin and try it again.
Start again, which was really the message of this weekend was, okay, yeah, you have an idea and it may or may not be a good one. It may be one that can be executed on, but the bottom line is if you learn the process of innovation, if you learn how to think, if you learn how to take it forward, if you learn how to test it, if you learn how to validate either the problem or the solution, then you can continue to apply that to other ideas. And as you say, more complicated systems, as Jake was asking the question of, how do you move it into a more complicated situation? So that was really the message of this weekend, was just start learning the process.
No, I'm glad. And that's a central route to learning everything. If you want to be in a system and you want to understand how it's going to be the most optimally used to what's going to help the most people, or what's going to give you the most satisfaction and efficiency in what you're going to do, and to help the most people or help your organization whatever way you see fit, you got to learn the system. You got to learn the system. If you don't know the world you're working around, you're going to be working in the blind the entire time. And that goes for school, that goes for work, that goes for relationships, that goes for everything in life, actually. So there's even a philosophical piece you can take from this.